Okay, I get it. So many of you guys have requested this video for the longest time, and so it's probably about time I do it. Honestly, I'm still very much a noob, and my skills pale in comparison to the actual pros at the game. But between getting the all-perfect on Heat Up Normal Master, the full combo on Jewel, and recently finishing a ranked season in the Master rank for my first time, I think I have finally earned the privilege to make this video. And so today let's talk about how you can improve our Project Sekai and become a pro in no time. Tip number 1. Game settings. Let's start off with the game settings, and the reason we do that is because they are often so easy to fix, but can vastly alter how well you can play. The single most important setting that honestly literally every single player should have turned on is the early late indicator. This setting tells you whether you're tapping early or late, and it also produces this useful chart at the end of the game. It might take a little bit to get used to recognizing the red and blue colors on the screen, but it is definitely a necessity in order to fine-tune your skills, and is a very useful tool when trying to diagnose your other settings. Adjust your note speed and delay settings frequently. Many players choose one setting and then never change it again, but the correct settings can change often, depending on your reaction time, as well as the time taken for your brain to process visual and audio signals. These timings can actually vary quite a bit, depending on the time of day when you're playing. For example, look at these two screenshots. The one on the left was when I played in the afternoon, and the one on the right was when I played at around 6 AM. As you can see, the results are so different, even though they are played using the exact same settings. So, it is often important to adjust them every session. Luckily, after the recent update introducing 2 decimal place, note speeds and delays, you can easily tailor these settings to your own liking. But how do you find the right settings? Let's start with fixing the delay. The delay basically is how you sync the audio with the chart, and this can be affected by 3 things: the delay of your device, the delay of any headphones or other accessory devices, but also the delay in your brain. The first 2 should be easy to understand, and they should stay fairly constant, but the third one may be slightly more difficult to understand. Basically, it takes a different amount of time for your brain to process visual and audio stimuli. In fact, according to this study in 2009, the delay between those 2 can be as much as 125 milliseconds, equivalent to 15 frames on a 120 FPS device. And this can be further pronounced if you're playing while you're tired. And yes, I went ahead and read an actual research paper, so please subscribe because gosh, I am not getting paid enough for this. Anyway, the easiest way to fix the delay is just by using the timing tool in the settings, increasing the delay if you tap above the line, and decreasing it if you tap below. I recommend readjusting the delay pretty frequently, because sometimes it really helps with the accuracy and can easily be the difference between an AP and an FC. What about note speed though? Too low of a note speed and your screen will look very cluttered, but too high and you won't have enough time to react to the patterns. Again, looking at my Heat Up normal gameplay, You can infer that my reaction time is significantly worse when I play just after waking up. For absolute beginners, I recommend starting at speed 8, but gradually increasing the speed after every show by, let's say, 0.1 until you at least reach 10, which is basically the minimum speed you want to be at in order to be able to comfortably play harder songs. For more advanced players, depending on the number of earlies and lates you get each show, you want to further adjust your note speed. If you get a few earlies, you want to increase the speed slightly. If you get a few lates, you want to decrease the speed slightly. And if you get a bunch of earlies and a bunch of lates, you want to just delete the game. That was a joke, don't actually delete the game. And just a little tip, but make sure you adjust the delay before you adjust your note speed, because if the audio and the chart aren't synced, then the late early indicator may give an inaccurate representation of your reaction time. Tip number 2. Learn to 4K. There are 3 main ways to play Project Sekai: using thumbs, using index, and using 4K. And before you comment angrily down below, "Oh Luna, but I use 6K," no you didn't exist, get off the comment section. Anyway, in case you're new to rhythm games, K stands for keys. So in this context of Project Sekai, it refers to the number of fingers you use. So 2K means 2 fingers, 4K means 4 fingers, and so on. When Project Sekai first came out, the game was advertised as playable with only 2 fingers. While this is true to a certain extent, as it is very much possible to play charts up to Master 32 with only 2 fingers, it is simply inefficient and ineffective fingering. The problem with using 2K is that, well, you're only using 2 fingers. This makes finger placement much more unforgiving. When you play, you may notice there is a recoil time between each tap, and this limits your fingering speed. When you're using 4 fingers, you spread the recoil times between more fingers, and so you can play faster and harder songs. Furthermore, your fingers also cover a larger section of the screen, meaning your arm has to move less to reach each note. And so the game becomes much easier. Also, with the release of pen charts, using 4K is becoming more and more of a necessity. Now, it's all fine and dandy to just say get good at using 4K, but how exactly do you learn that? A lot of people never learn 4K because they don't know where to start. And so here are 3 steps to easily master using 4K. 1. Start by completely switching away from using your index fingers to only using your middle fingers for several days. And when I say completely, I mean completely. It may initially feel odd to use your middle fingers, and your gameplay will be far from perfect. But this exposure will give you a chance to familiarize yourself with the hand muscles associated, and to train your muscle memory. Make sure you play charts that are relatively easy for you, such as songs that you may have already previously full comboed. We don't want to put too much stress on your middle fingers just yet. 2. Once you're fairly comfortable with using your middle finger, this took about 3 days for me, and it may take a different length of time for different people. Gradually start reintroducing your index fingers. A general rule that I use for 4K is to tap all notes touching one edge of the screen with the middle fingers, and you can see this in most of my gameplay videos. 3. By this point, you should be decently comfortable with using 4K. If you're still struggling, go back to step 1 and use only the middle fingers for a few more days. What we're trying to do here is to improve our muscle memory. Once you're ready, step 3 is to start playing more append chops. Start with the easier ones such as ID Smile and Leg Train, and gradually work your way up the difficulty. And that's it. The ability to use 4 fingers instead of 2 is, in my opinion, the single most important skill to learn in Project Sekai. If you only take away one tip from this video to improve your skills, that's it. Oh, and also to all the thumb players out there, please stop using thumbs. It is significantly easier to control your index fingers than your thumbs, because you can move your entire wrist and arm when you're not also having to hold your device. And so there's a much higher skill ceiling with using index fingers. If you want to become much better at the game, switching away from thumbs is the way to go. Tip number 3. Fingering techniques. Before we dive deep into the actual fingering, let's talk about a few important underlying techniques, just so we are on the same page. Firstly, make sure you are tapping underneath the judgment line. This is important because then your hands cover up a lesser proportion of the screen, giving you more time to react to the notes, as well as letting you see the chart more clearly. Secondly, when you're playing any type of vertical scrolling rhythm game, you should focus your sight on the top of the screen and not the judgment line. This is to give yourself more time to react so you don't have too late. You should only look at the bottom of your screen with your peripheral vision. In fact, you should be able to play with almost half your screen covered, like this. And thirdly, stop being a shrimp. The posture can sometimes have an effect on your gameplay, because different postures can change the angle and the distance to your screen. Once you are comfortable with using 4K, or at the very least 3K, the next step is to practice the actual gameplay techniques. Let's talk about cross hands. Many players struggle with cross hands, and honestly, I completely understand why. It takes a lot of practice to be able to do it smoothly and elegantly, and so here are a few pointers on how you may do that. Exaggerate your movements. Cross hands usually require you to move your entire wrist in order to reach the other side. So practicing wider arm movements when playing can be quite useful. Secondly, have your hands pass in front of each other, not on top of each other. Because Project Sekai registers your tap almost anywhere on the screen, it is usually easier to just slide the hand doing the whole note backwards and let the other hand doing the tapping in front. Also, having your hands not be on top of each other means you block off less of the screen. And if you're struggling to reach with your index fingers, you may want to consider using middle finger instead. The middle finger is slightly longer than the index finger, which means it may be slightly easier to reach the other side, and your wrists don't have to move as much. Moving on to soft land, also known as soft landing. This is where the note speed changes during the chart. I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bad at this at first, and it took a really long time for me to become comfortable with playing at slower speeds. Fortunately, there aren't really that many charts on EN with Softland, and the only ones you might realistically encounter are Yaminabe Expert, Jinsei Expert, Sunda Master, and Jewel Master. For a complete list, you can consult the wiki. Since there are so few charts, it's not too hard to practice them a lot and memorize the note patterns. Also, during Softland sections, it often helps to focus your vision lower down on the screen so you don't tap too early. And finally, let's talk about some of the hidden mechanics in the game. Hold notes have a much wider hitbox than they seem. As you can see, their actual hitboxes extend one lane to either side, so the game registers it even if your fingers aren't directly on the note. Secondly, hold end notes register when you release a finger. This is interesting because if you have multiple fingers on a hold note, releasing just one of them will hit the note. Also, hold notes only register every 8th note, and this can change with the BPM, so this means techniques such as this can happen. Another thing about hold notes is that if they're followed by a flick, you do not have to actually release your finger. This lets you do things like this in Saga Append. As you can see, my left hand is responsible for maintaining and flicking the hold notes, and this means I don't actually have to do any of the cross hands like you're supposed to. Another example of where this may be useful is in Tokyo Teddy Bear Append. And finally, flick notes. Normal flicks can be flicked in any direction, but directional flicks can only be flicked up or towards the direction as represented by the arrow. Otherwise, you get a wrong way flick, which can ruin your AP. All these hidden mechanics can be used together to achieve impossible looking fingerings like this. Tip number 4. Note patterns. Let's talk about some common note patterns. Many of these are found in most master charts, so I thought I'd dedicate a section to it. Trills. Probably the most common note pattern in any rhythm game. I personally suck at trills, and even after 2 full years of playing, I still get so many grades on them. The important thing about trills is that you want to try to decrease the amount of information your brain is receiving, so that it doesn't get overloaded. There are 2 main ways I achieve this. Firstly, I lower my sight line, so I'm focusing more on the judgment line rather than the top of the screen, which moves the rest of the notes into my peripheral vision, so my brain has less things to concentrate on. Secondly, I ignore the music and focus on the sound of my taps. This helps me focus more on the rhythm, and so my taps are on time. The second most common pattern, especially at about level 31 or above charts, are stairs. And the easiest way to deal with these, honestly, is just to use more fingers. Stairs come in a large variety. There are 3K stairs, such as in Jinsei Expert, 4K stairs, such as in Nail Append, or a combination of both, such as in Help Me Ellen Append. But the technique is the same. Being proficient with more than 2 fingers is vital to becoming good at these higher level charts. Hold notes. I still remember dying constantly on Reborn Master when I first started Project Sekai because of those really thin holds. But honestly, you should just cheese them with 4K. Just put your whole hand on the screen and you're basically guaranteed to hit the notes. Just make sure you don't put too many fingers on there, because some devices only support up to 4 fingers, and any more will cause the game to not register your taps. This lane splashing technique also applies to normal tap notes, but this may be slightly more difficult to pull off. For example, in Brand New Day Master, this is the intended fingering. However, if you line up your fingers just right at the center of the screen, you can actually hit both sides as just a trill. Alternating wide notes and thin notes. The most famous examples for this are probably Egoist and Future Eve. The way I do this is to assign one hand for the wide notes and use the other hand for the thin notes. To avoid your hands accidentally obstructing each other, you can place one hand off to the side and move the other hand behind as if you're doing cross hands. Finally, don't be afraid to try new fingering techniques. Even though I've shared the techniques I personally use, there are so many different ways to hit the same pattern, especially for more difficult charts. And what works for other people may not always work for you. For example, there are so many ways to do the intro for Hibana Master, and there isn't just one correct fingering. So try out many different techniques, and don't hesitate to invent new ones to suit your style. Tip number 5. Extra tools. Getting good at Project Sekai isn't just about throwing yourself at a chart for hours at a time and hoping you FC it at some point. Instead, there are many other tools outside the game, and using these the right way is the key to becoming a pro. Let's start with Sekai.best. I'm sure all of you have at least experienced once, where there's a really weird spam or something that you simply cannot read, no matter how many times you try. Well, you can try going onto Sekai.best, scroll down to music, select the song you're struggling with, and press PNG. This produces the entire chart in one spread, and you can study it for however long you want to. I also sometimes like to annotate the chart, using different colors to label the notes, so I know which finger to tap which note with. And while we're here, let's talk about Sonorous. This is probably one of the best tools. Firstly, it's extremely easy to see the entire chart. All you have to do is press preview and voila! Secondly, you can use the level speed setting to make the chart slower, allowing you to read patterns you otherwise cannot. And finally, if there's a section that you constantly miss on, you can also use the mark and jump functions for more targeted practice. And as a bonus, you can also create and play custom charts on here, so Sonorous is a must-have for Project Sekai players. Before I end the video, I want to spend a little time talking about the game mentality. There's unfortunately no magic shortcut to becoming a pro overnight. I've been playing the game for over 2 years now, and it's only through very consistent practice that I've managed to become decent at the game. Yes, there will be times when you can't full combo anything. Yes, there will be times when you miss at the same section for the 20th time. Yes, there will be times when you feel like you aren't making any progress. The answer is always just to practice more. But at the same time, remember to take lots of breaks. If you find yourself playing the same song for 3 hours in a row at 2 AM while you're extremely sleep deprived, just go to sleep and try again the next day. Improving at Project Sekai isn't a race. It's about taking small steps and gradually building up your skills. That's all the time I have for today. If you found this video helpful, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Scripting, recording, and editing this video took a very long time, so I would greatly appreciate it if you could help support this channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!